glad for those of you who are right on time to join us. We're going to give folks some time to filter in. We ask that you submit the questions through the Q&A function rather than the chat function, which will be turned off. So start getting your questions ready. We're happy to discuss anything from the reporting side as well to the technical side. I have a special guest here with us today from a local installation company called Atma Energy. So he'll be here and at the ready to answer any of the more technical stuff. So glad Super Tim could be here with us today. He is featured in parts 1 and 2 and helped me a lot through this whole process, break stuff down. So thanks for being with us today.
Awesome. No, thank you for having me, Sarah. Appreciate it.
So let's see. Looks like we're still getting some questions. Well, I thought, let me not knock everything over before we even get started. I thought one of the fun things to discuss right up top is sort of a new development we're seeing.
Yeah.
So just on Friday, Senator Judith Zaffirini filed a bill that got at a lot of the things that I reported on through the story. So that's really exciting.
Right.
So if you're just tuning in and you're not as familiar, I am the reporter who wrote the 4-part series called In Broad Daylight for the San Antonio Express News. My name is Sara DiNatale, and I'm here with Atma Energy founder Super Tim Srinivasan, and he was featured in those quoted in those first 2 stories and helped me really unpack and understand some of this stuff. So what we did through that reporting process at the Express News really was built off of a base of consumer complaints made to the Attorney General's office. So I put in a huge records request. I got more than 1,000 of those complaints and really just read all of them, sorted them into different categories to really see the depth of this issue. Stuff Super Tim knew was a problem because he was seeing it in his own business. So to go over a few statistics to sort of set the tone, in those cases I examined, we found that more than half of the people who complained to the Attorney General in that 16-month period we looked at told them that they were making payments on systems that either weren't working or were unfinished. And we saw that another 28% of people said that the systems were generating much less power than they were promised, and usually not enough to offset their bills. Some of the other information we got from local utilities at CPS Energy and Austin Energy showed a range, I think, of like between 18 and 24% of the systems they were inspecting were failing that first inspection, which means they weren't even able to get hooked up on the grid. And as Super Tim will explain to us, this is by no means saying that solar isn't a good technology, that solar can't help offset your energy bills, but it shows that the folks you entrust to install those systems have a lot of responsibility to uphold to ensure that those systems are being installed properly and designed well. And sadly, we found that that was often not happening. And folks like Atma Energy have kind of been left picking up the pieces, helping folks get broken systems back on. To start, though, I did want to talk about that bill just because it's exciting to see some changes come through. And I already lost everyone's little question thing. So if there's questions, I'm sorry. Where did they go? Oh, here it is. Okay. Great. All right. So to talk about the bill, now that I have all my windows back open, bear with me, everybody. Thank you for joining us. A quick overview of the bill. It's the biggest consumer protection bill we've seen filed in Texas focused on solar. Senator Judith Zaffirini, Democrat from the Laredo area, filed it on Friday. So the high points are just generally it would add a lot more supervision. There would be penalties for folks found lying or misleading customers. Those financial penalties would be heightened if the victim was over 55 years old, which we found that a lot of elderly people are often caught up in this and not fully understanding what they're agreeing to and taking advantage of. Super Tim, what were some of your impressions just reading through the bill language?
I think it's a really important step in the right direction. We hear countless stories about homeowners that get taken advantage of. And solar is complicated, it's really technical. So the solar company's responsibility becomes presenting this information in such a way that the homeowner can make a decision for themselves. Solar sizes differ, technologies differ, goals may be different. And from a homeowner's perspective, it's really difficult to get the exact same component from 3 different vendors so you can shop and compare and contrast. So this bill sort of introduces that professional responsibility from the vendor so that they can, there's a liability in place. Now there's a penalty for misleading. There's a penalty for not following through on what you think the system is going to do. And it gives, I'm hoping that it gives consumer more confidence in the technology. Like, okay, now there are mechanisms where if I get taken advantage of, I can go after these companies and get a refund or go to a different contractor and get this issue resolved, because some of the stories we hear is just heartbreaking, right? Like, we have this one customer that she's 65 on a fixed income. She has a system. It works, but the promise was your bill is going to go to 0 and it's going to be the greatest thing ever. And that's not quite the case. And unfortunately today, there is no recourse. She's still stuck paying the loan payment for the solar system. And the best we can do is get the system back online and get her savings what the system can do. But this bill introduces a really powerful means so that she can go after that company and say, hey, I need a refund to kind of, take the system away, bring my roof back to original settings and give me the money back. That's really, really important. I think that'll really fix, or at least introduce the concept of a responsibility for all the solar players out there. And we need more solar on the grid, but we also need consumers' confidence in the technology to go up.
Right. Yeah. And I've had this discussion with other grid experts. It's like, the solar we need for the grid needs to work, right? Yeah, exactly. So like, you don't want that chunk of folks who are, not getting permitted by inspectors to get connected.
Exactly.
And this kind of builds on a question we got from one of our viewers who asked if people were able to get their money back from going solar. So I guess I'll answer your question in 2 ways because I'm not sure in what way you mean. Like, yes, there are definitely people who get their bill offset because of their solar. I mean, that's, right. I'm sure most of your customers, right? Other than the ones you're helping who are in a bad situation. But if you're talking about people like the customer you just mentioned, who's in a tough spot, she doesn't really have the recourse. And that's why this bill would help, and why, if you're passionate about this, you should definitely reach out to your lawmakers and say, hey, you should support this bill. Because right now there isn't a lot you can do. This bill introduces language that would require refunds on systems, which is not something we have now. The penalties can go up to $100,000, which is not something that the state has now. In addition, it also wouldn't limit folks who maybe will get like the refund or civil penalties to then make their own lawsuit. Right. So right now, that's really the only option folks have, is to file their own private lawsuit. But a lot of times the companies they're going after have gone bankrupt. So like they don't have the assets to go after, which makes the lawsuits kind of untenable. And it really puts homeowners in a really tough situation. Right. Okay. So Jennifer, who asked that question, clarified, means the people who were lied to. There's not, it's really difficult for them to get any level of accountability. Someone asked for the bill number, and that is a great question. I don't have it in front of me, but I can easily get it for you. So just give me a question. We'll come back to that. While I hunt for that, can you, Super Tim, talk about what about the loans associated with these transactions? Does the bill provide a way to unwind those when the system doesn't work? So we can't speak so much to the specifics of what this bill would or wouldn't do, since it's all proposals right now. And there will definitely be ways to give feedback to lawmakers as these bills are going through committee. Again, like there's ways for you to contact your representatives and make sure you spell out the things that are important to you. I don't know specifically what it will do with loans, but I imagine if it's in the bill as it is now about like you have the opportunity to get the system refunded, I imagine that would like potentially take care of the loan. But again, we can't say for sure. But can you speak a little bit about loans in general while I find the bill number?
Absolutely.
And just like about financing options and maybe some of the red flags that come with the different types of financing options that are out there.
Absolutely. And that was a great question too. So, part of the bill also focuses on consumer education. So making it the PUC's responsibility to present materials that make it easy for consumers to understand how does solar work, what are the different components involved. So as you're looking to shop for solar, right, there's 2 ways to pay for the system, 3 ways to pay for the system. One is you pay cash outright. So you pay the contractor from your bank account and you're done, right? The second option, which is the most popular option, is you can finance the system through a third-party lender. So there's an important distinction here because now you're signing 2 contracts. You're signing a contract with the installation company to provide the service. You're signing a contract with a financial institution to restitute the loan. So it's really important to understand how those 2 are linked and what recourse you have with each of those parties. From a bank's perspective, what they're doing is they're loaning you money for solar. They bear no responsibility for the system's performance. So you can't go after them to say, hey, I borrowed money from you. It's not working. That is not their problem. It is a solar installer's problem, right? So in the contract with the installer, you have to make sure that you are looking at how much am I getting? What is the estimated production? What is the value of that production? And how much am I going to pay for the system on a monthly loan with and without incentives? So there are 2 main incentives available to all Texans, right? You have the federal credit, 30% tax credit. You also have local utility rebates that are available. So you have to make sure you understand, is the loan payment, the dollar amount that you're seeing, is that after applying all those incentives? If so, what are the incentives and do I qualify for them or not? And that is a simple thing that a lot of homeowners get sold on. It's like, okay, I'm going to show you the lowest dollar amount that is possible in the hopes that you get those incentives, but it's your responsibility to understand your tax situation and then claim those incentives. So in that bill, I'm not sure, who, but the refund process, is that going to be straight to the contractor or will the bill put some burden on the financial institutions as well?
Yeah.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see because if you're not super familiar with like the process, typically a bill goes to committee and then from committee it gets passed on to the House and the Senate. So it has a lot of iterations and like edits to go through. But it's important to ask these questions so they can potentially be addressed before anything gets finalized into law.
Right.
While we were on the topic of tax credits, I did want to touch on, and this is focused on in the story, but just as a general PSA, I guess, is make sure you understand what a tax credit is. Yeah. A lot of times we see salespeople, dishonest or misleading salespeople, especially those who go door to door, making it sound like it's a rebate, like the federal government at the end of the year is going to write you this fat check. And that's just not how tax credits work. Tax credits are taken from the money you owe the government at the end of the year. So if you're someone who typically doesn't pay a lot in taxes at the end of the year, that credit really isn't going to apply to you. So we see this a lot of times come up with folks on fixed incomes, because if they're getting Social Security, that's non-taxable income, or families who are taking advantage of child tax credits, because the child tax credits are applied before your taxes are eligible for, I can't remember the exact language, but before you're looking at what's eligible for these energy tax credits to be applied. So a lot of times I've talked to single mothers who didn't even realize that they wouldn't be eligible because they already weren't having to pay much in taxes because of the tax credits they were getting from their kids. So they were kind of expecting to get this 30% back on a system, and that just they weren't eligible for it. So that is something to keep in mind. Yeah. Is just really understanding your taxes, what is realistic for you, and if those credits could potentially apply.
Right. And to build on that, so there's, as a solar professional, as an energy professional, we can tell you what the system qualifies for. So based on how much you're investing, this is the maximum available incentives to you. you have to go talk to a tax professional like a CPA to understand, based on this eligible amount, what does my tax situation look like and how can I take advantage of that? You do have 10 years to get the full amount, so there are means available, but it is an energy professional shouldn't be giving out tax advice. You need to talk to tax professionals that can understand your unique situation and ask you a question, okay, how much are you investing? What is the total eligible amount? That information the energy professional should be able to provide to you.
And to circle back to where we started, I said I was going to find the bill for you all. It is Senate Bill 1036. So you can read the full language on the Texas legislature's website. On the landing page, the Express News /solar landing page, if you look under the results tab, we published a story the other day that outlines some of the bill and gives you some other details. Someone asked, do you know if a bill like the one proposed was already approved in other states? It's definitely not an apples to apples comparison, but other states, yes, have been much more aggressive in how they regulate this. California and Florida, for example, require door-to-door sales people to register and basically get a permit and pay a fee. That's something that's also included in this bill. Yep. So there would be an actual registration and an ability to sort of track companies and individuals in a way that we don't really currently have.
Right.
And that would, of course, if someone is constantly getting complaints against them, right, there would be in theory, a way to track it. We see states like Nevada, their attorney general office has actually created a coalition that goes after some of these bad actors, does investigations, then passes that information on either to the AG's office to do prosecute if that is the right means, or if it's actually found that they're breaking the law with fraud and other things. They sometimes get police enforcement involved, but they're kind of like this point coalition that is the one really putting the pieces together, because I'm sure, as you know, and I've noticed a lot of times these people hop from company to company. Right. They'll close one LLC and open another one. So it can be really confusing, even for folks who are knowledgeable and trying to research a company to figure out who's actually involved, and what and who's who and what. So that could definitely help. Let's see. Are other states having the problems we are having? Definitely. What has your experience been, just from what you hear from other people in the business?
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, a lot of solar gets overpromised and underdelivers, right? And Minnesota Attorney General went after the solar financing companies with hidden dealer fees. Nevada had this huge issue with a known offender that just keeps changing names, and they went after them, put him in bankruptcy court. So it's all over the nation. And it sounds great, too good to be true, right? Like solar you hear sales pitches that say, hey, if you pay $500 a month in energy costs, it's going to become $5,000 in no time. Pay $100 and never have that again. That's too good to be true, right? So you need to be able to understand that, shop it, ask some tough questions, and don't sign contracts on the same meeting. That's another common complaint we hear from all over this country is people knock on someone's door and their goal is to come to the kitchen table, sit down with you, and get you to sign something. And it doesn't mean anything, just sign here, just initial here. It means a lot. Don't sign anything. Yeah.
Right? They're typically on iPads, DocuSign. We found that it opens the door also for fraudulent signatures, just because people don't necessarily realize what they're signing. There's an example in our series of a woman named Barbara Kreitzberg, who is just outside of Houston. And she says that she was basically given a blank iPad screen and essentially tricked into signing something. Yeah. She her now reflecting on it, she thinks that's what happened. But all she remembers is, I was holding an iPad. I was tapping on it, trying to get it to work. Yeah. They said, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out later. She had a whole other series of issues that she was dealing with health-wise. So, this wasn't a top priority to her to think what was up with that iPad until she found out her name was tied to a huge loan. And we've seen more clear-cut cases of fraud where, we have IP address evidence that the folks who said they signed the contracts were not even in the same state that the contracts were signed in. So if you're dealing with a company that refuses to like print out the contract for you, like that's a huge red flag. I can't imagine. Now that doesn't mean that all iPad contracts are bad. But like if you're making a request, like, hey, can I have this printed out and I want to sign it in pens and paper? I can't imagine that you wouldn't be like that. You're
take your time to review it, right? You're signing this really important document. Take as much time as you need. Ask us questions. Let's sit down and go through it together. Oftentimes, we also help consumers with, here's a contract with us for our services. Here's a contract with the financial institution for their part of the equation. So you understand there's two different parties involved. And that's really important too. One common, a really strong, simple thing like pre-qualification or soft credit pull, which is actually really useful to say, do I qualify for financing or not without impacting my credit score? That's a good thing to have. That gets taken advantage of by saying, hey, this is a pre-qualification, doesn't mean anything. But behind that, you have a contract that you're signing up for.
Yeah.
So consumer protection education is another big part of this bill, where it's going to make it the responsibility of the PUC to help put together materials so the consumers can understand what are the different components and what it means to them.
For sure. Someone mentioned I may have misspoke when I was talking about tax credits. Charlie, I agree with what you said. So if I didn't say that, that is just me miswording something. It counts towards your tax liability. So if you have childhood tax credits that apply toward that tax liability, if you don't have anything left, then the solar credits can apply, correct? Yeah. Right. I'm sorry if I misspoke before. Elizabeth asked if there is a recording of this that will be available. Yes, we posted to our YouTube page. Can you discuss dealer fees on solar loans? Yes, for sure. So Super Tim helped me understand it's a lot. Yes. So he's a great person. He's one of the first people I talked to about this. But essentially, in theory, they're not necessarily bad. Right. It's about transparency. Exactly. So if you're it's similar. It's basically buying down an interest rate. The problem, and you can elaborate on this, is if you don't realize that's what you're doing. And a lot of times the kind of get you at the door premise is like, well, sign now and I'll give you a 2% interest rate. And in this economy, that's unheard of. Go try to get a car loan for, to make a 2% interest rate. Like that's not going to happen. So can you speak a little bit to how dealer fees are sort of misconstrued, and also just as context that this is what he mentioned before as being the crux of an ongoing AG lawsuit in Minnesota, where the Minnesota Attorney General argues, hey, you're not disclosing these fees properly. And a lot of the financial lenders in this space are arguing, well, they know what the whole total is, so we are disclosing it. And there's a debate about if they are properly disclosing it or not. And there's kind of this gray area in the law that hopefully this ongoing attorney general case will eventually clear up. So it's clearer for everyone. But can you speak to just like in reality, what is happening when folks are facing these fees?
So dealer fees, essentially what it is financial institutions, they offer cheap interest rates in return for a fixed upfront payment. So it's not a bad thing, right? If you're looking for a low interest rate option, and you're willing to pay that $10,000 in accrued interest upfront, you can get a 3.99, 2.99 loan. The problem becomes that a lot of the financial institutions make it in their contract with solar companies, prevent us from disclosing dealer fees. So we cannot give out a cash price and a financed amount. Like they both have to be the same. We can give out a cash discount. So if you're going cash, we'll give you a discount and we'll give you a $2,000, $3,000 discount. That's the problem with that, right? So what we did was like, well, we're not okay with that. So we're going to disclose what it costs to go solar and what are the different financing mechanisms available. Based on those financing mechanisms, the cost changes. So we can have a same as cash loan. You're paying a 6-7% loan. You can have a 3.99 loan and you're paying $20,000 extra for the 3.99. So each homeowner's goals are different. Each situation is different. So each financing product has a particular market and a particular audience. What's really important is that as a consumer, you should know what are you paying for and where the money is going. How much is going to solar, how much is going to financial institution, how much is going for interest payments. Those things shouldn't be hidden and buried, and you shouldn't be misled about it. You should have the information before you make the purchasing decision. And I think that's an important distinction with dealer fees, because dealer fees, the problem with it is it's very difficult for solar companies to give you that breakdown because financial institutions say you cannot do that. So Credit Human is a local financing institution that says, hey, we don't offer dealer fees. You can talk about dealer fees. Sorian is another new one that's coming up that don't have dealer fees. Climate First is a national bank. I think they have a presence in Florida, Texas, and they're expanding nationally. They don't have any other loan. They don't have any loan that has a dealer fee built in. Their whole motto is, hey, no dealer fees, very transparent pricing. I think that's important from a consumer confidence perspective, that you should know where your money is going to.
Right. And, if you are in a position where you're looking at different financing options, you should be able to ask, is there a dealer fee? And if you see someone freeze up, that should be a sign that, if the interest looks too good to be true, it probably is. It's just like, we're not currently in an economic situation where you're going to get a 2% interest rate right now. So if that's what you're being offered, that money's coming somewhere else, and it's your right to know, where it's coming from. Let's see. Find another good one. This kind of builds on that. And I think you may have touched on this answer a little bit before, but Stan asks, what responsibility do the lenders also have in the lack of disclosures for how systems are intended to perform? He gives an example of a lender that, in his experience, used to police performance very vigilantly. What is your take on that as far as you've communicated a lot more with these financiers than I certainly have.
Yeah. It depends on how you're financing it, right? So there's the two options are you pay cash, you finance it. There's a third option that's available in the deregulated spaces of Texas, which is leasing. In that particular case, the lender owns equipment and you're kind of leasing energy from them. So a lot more burden is on the lender to make sure the system is performing. If you're financing from them, then it's really, you can complain to the lender and they stand to lose, because if you stop making payments to them, then they have to figure out a way to make you happy so you can make payments again. And that is a leverage you can use to get the lender to either go back to the original contractor and get them to fix the system, or find you an alternate contractor. We've had a lot of homeowners that get referred to us by Good Leap and other financial institutions that say, hey, my solar company went out of business. Can you help me fix it? This is my system and this is the loan I'm making. So it's your responsibility to still pay the loan payment, because that's the contract that you signed up with them. But there's certainly means available to you to kind of get your system operating and saving you as much as it can.
Yeah. And I know that's a situation you've been in with folks where they come to you with the financing already in place, and it may not be a financier that you would love to work with, but you're just trying to get them into a place where at least they're getting some of their power back. Someone asked if we could speak more to the registration you referenced in the bill proposal. Yeah. So I imagine the thought is similar to what California and Florida do, where the individual is subject to a criminal background check, and has to pay a fee to register. That extra step, I think, could be really helpful, even though it sounds like, what will that really do? Because as you know, a lot of these out-of-state companies fly in these groups of 20-somethings to just swarm neighborhoods and knock on doors. So taking that extra step where they actually have to register and pay a fee, I imagine that would weed some of that out. It might not stop it altogether, but at least some states have added even further stipulations where you have to be an employee, so you can't even be they don't even let you third party independent contractors sell solar door to door. So that other states have kind of taken that step to specifically stop the solicitation happening. I don't think the Texas bill proposed right now goes quite as far, but at least it would hypothetically curb some of that. And I do think the background checks would be a good step too. In one of the stories of the series, in the second one, we actually have an example of a sales person going door to door, and he was wearing an ankle monitor on probation for actively and going through court proceedings for charges. And it's just speaks to someone's general character, I think. If they're in trouble with the law, you might not want to be taking like a huge loan out with them or trusting what they have to say. I know I saw this question and now I can't find it. So sorry if I butcher exactly how you worded it, but it was essentially what does training for a salesperson look like for a good company versus a bad company? I'll take a little bit on the bad company side, and then you can take the good company side. So obviously, no two companies are going to be exactly the same, even when we look at the quote unquote bad guys. But through my reporting, I obtained some videos of like sessions that sort of taught salesmen what to do. And the sales training really was focused just on sales, not on the actual like technology or what would make sense for a home. It went over like ways to essentially spot a potential like buyer based off of like down to the cars they have in their driveway, or like trinkets in their lawn. Oh, that is, the instructor is like, oh, that's probably someone who's older and, they may be on a fixed income, but at least their credit's going to pass. The training really focused on like, how do I get people to say yes rather than like, how do I explain this technology well? And most of these folks, if any, in that situation, like they didn't have a background in energy. They didn't have any certifications through, and I'm going to butcher NABCEPs. Yeah. But what they actually, it's like the North American
Board of Certified.
Yeah. So it's NABCEP is like an industry standard. They give out certifications for like every little part of a solar process. So sometimes you'll see a company say like, oh, well, we have NABCEP. And it's like, well, the CEO took like one NABCEP course. Rather than being like, we have NABCEP designers, we have NABCEP technicians, there's a bunch of different certifications. So they're not typically getting that kind of training. It's really like more sales oriented and how to like move product and how to decide what doors you're going to knock on. From what I saw, obviously not every company is the same, but I'm sure you can take us a little bit more into like what we would like to see more, technicians and salespeople and designers, what kind of training that your folks get.
So our sales training is quite different. We focus a lot on the product first. So it's very technical in nature. The first 6 weeks are spent on understanding at a very high level how solar works, then drilling down into what are the different types of panels available and how to read a spec sheet and what makes a panel good or bad. Then same thing on inverters, same thing on batteries. And then we move into financing. What are all the financing mechanisms available and how do they generally work? So the first 6 weeks is very intentionally designed on product. And then we focus on how do you take this really complicated technical information and communicate that effectively to the homeowner. So that's the sales part of it, where it's revolved around asking questions, understanding your goals, trying to think through what combination of products would get you to your goal in the best way possible. We're very transparent about if it doesn't make sense for the homeowner to put solar, we're very upfront about that. Our compensation package that we offer to our salespeople reflects the way we want them to behave. So we're not paying people to sell the most expensive system. We're paying people to help in the best way possible. That's another big difference with us. And then at Atma, because we are so technically oriented, we also do monthly, we call them tech bites. If you ask our salespeople, they're like tech seminars. We think they're tech bites, but it's technology is evolving really fast. Panels, wattages improve, inverter technology improves. There's bidirectional EVs coming out. So every month we focus on sort of adding to our sales team's technical repertoire so that as a consumer, when you're asking us a question, our sales agent is able to explain them and then bring on an engineer to the call or bring on a site assessor to the call to make sure that we can fit what we need to fit on the roof as intended. So our sales process is very different, right? Like, it starts with a consultation, then our salesperson goes out, flies a drone, does a 3D model of your house to make sure we can fit the panels, understands your bills, gets an engineer involved. Based on that, we'll put together 2 or 3 different proposals for you and then kind of help you choose one that most closely matches your desires. So that's our sales training. I think our sales cycles are somewhere between 5 to 8 weeks. So from the first time you talk to us, by the time you see a contract, it's about 8 weeks. It gives you time to think through it. You're making a big decision. Solar is, for most people, it's a one-time purchase, unless you buy solar and then you move to another house. So it's a big decision. We want you to feel really good about that decision. And we want to make sure that we are analyzing the site perfectly so we can tell you what this thing can and cannot do. That's our sales training is very technical. It's focused around, and we hire people that are friendly and that don't have a sales background or solar background. We kind of bring on fresh people and train them both on solar and sales so they can be as helpful as possible.
Someone asked another technical question. And I think I know the answer, but you're probably better suited. And it's that, do they always have to go on roofs? And I imagine I know I've seen them on gazebos and different. So can you speak to some of the other options that there may be that make sense for folks?
Yeah. So technology is improving quite a bit. So with drone technology, we are able to make site assessments a whole lot safer for our team. So instead of having to get up on a roof and kind of measure the roof in a manual way, we have the ability to create a 3D model that catches all the information within a quarter of an inch of an accuracy. So with that, we can eliminate getting on the roof to inspect to see if the system fits or not. But there are some roofs that are aged. If you got a roof 10, 15 years ago, and we need to inspect to see what's the age of the shingles and how much longer they have left. In that particular case, we bring on a roofer to get on the roof to inspect the shingles to make sure that the roof, you won't have to replace the roof within 3 to 5 years of purchasing the solar system, that there's still life left on the roof. In those cases, we do have a roofer come out and get on the roof to physically inspect the shingles. Other than that, we use technology to make it safer for our techs to analyze the structure with greater accuracy than having to be on the roof.
One of the other questions that kind of builds on that is what to do if you have an older roof, or, does it really only make sense to do this if you have a newer roof? So where do you meet people in that process when they're deciding how this works with the structure of their home?
That's a good question. There's no one size fits all. It really depends on what you're looking to do. So for example, if you have a house that is, 15 years old, typically shingle roofs last about 25 years. So you have about 10 years of roof life left. Depending on the orientation of the house and depending on if it's east-west, north-south, or a mix of all four, what we have seen is when you put solar on the roof, it does elongate the shelf life of the shingles because they're not exposed to direct sunlight.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
At the same time, we can't put solar on all four sides of the roof. If your roof is facing north, then you have, we're not going to propose solar on that. So that section of the roof, right? So that section of the roof may need to be replaced before the rest of the roof. So we analyze that and then we tell you, okay, these 3 sections of the roof, you're good for maybe another 15, 20 years. This section, next 5 years, what would you like to do? Would you like to replace the roof before putting solar on? Or would you like to have a price or what it would cost 10 years down the line? Now, I can't tell you a price of what it would cost 10 years down the line because I don't know what labor cost might be. But today we charge $250 a panel to come out, remove the panels, put it back on. So that's another red flag. If a solar company is promising you, oh yeah, don't worry about your roof, it's going to be great. You have a free, reinstall included in your contract. Make sure that's there in writing. I've seen people not honoring that. Oh yeah, that's a sales guy that overpromised. We can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. So it really depends on your goal. Like if you're suffering from high bills or outages and you really want solar and you're okay with that trade, it makes sense. We have had issues where roofs are 25 years old or nearing the end of their life. In those cases, we say, hey, if there's too many areas of the roof that'll cause leaks, we don't recommend putting solar on before replacing the roof. It is imperative that you replace the roof before putting solar on. And you can go through insurance. If you had hail event, the insurance will give you a new roof. So we help you talk to insurance to see if you qualify through insurance or do you have to come out of pocket to put a new roof in. So again, it just depends. Metal roofs have a longer shelf life. Shingle roofs have a slightly less shelf life.
Yeah. No, the roofing issues definitely came up a lot in my reporting. And I think is usually why so many people were experiencing leaks.
Right.
Is that their home probably just wasn't a great fit to begin with for exactly what you said. But instead of a salesman or a system analyst being like, hey, this isn't the right structure, you need to spend money elsewhere before you do this. Sometimes that honesty just is not there. There's 2 questions kind of about utilities that I think can kind of go together. Well, The one brings up what Austin Energy does, which is the $2,500 rebate.
Yep.
In order to get that rebate, you have to take a solar education course,
Yes.
which goes over some of the same stuff we've been talking about.
Exactly.
And I have heard from industry that they really like it.
Yeah.
Well, the industry that's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
They like it. They don't mind. I know the same question brings up that utilities don't have rebates as much. But I will say that, there's probably a different debate to have over rebates but as far as these courses being sort of a required step,
Yes.
I have heard that from across many folks like yourself who think that's a great idea.
Absolutely, yes.
Because it just adds another step in the process.
Yeah.
And it also, depending on how the policy is structured for that utility, it can also prevent like the system can't be powered on until this happens or whatever. So it becomes like an order or that the person, the installer can't get paid and all these things, it depends on the language but creating those barriers, I think most people would agree is a good thing. And then there was another question from someone who's probably local because they mentioned CPS, and shouldn't the utilities in San Antonio be doing more to stomp out bad actors? These are their customers after all that are being taken advantage of. So I will kind of parrot some of what CPS has told me, and then you can speak a little bit to your perspective. But one of the things CPS does offer that I think they wish more people would take advantage of is an audit. They do for free, like an at-home energy audit. So they'll actually come into your home and it's free for all CPS customers. And they'll basically say, give you advice on if your home is even makes sense for solar, but they may also help you bring down or rather improve your energy efficiency. So for some folks, it may make way more sense to invest in a more efficient air conditioning unit and better insulation before they go straight to solar. And ultimately, if you bring down your energy use, the amount of panels you need is going to decrease as well. So that's a resource they offer. Now, I know, and Super Tim can elaborate this on a little more. I know that, and you're not the only one who has brought this up. Other local companies have brought up the idea of, are there ways to use existing funding related to energy efficiency and helping lower income customers who maybe that funding can be utilized in a new way. Can you speak to a little bit about what you would like to see to just be able to help more folks? And if that's the role you would like to see more utilities potentially pay?
Yeah. I think it's really, really important for, utilities to support consumer education. If as a homeowner, you have resources at your fingertips from a trusted source that tell you, okay, like, here's how much energy I use, here's what my roof looks like, or here's how generally solar works. It makes our lives a lot easier because you're not going to fall prey to a scam artist, right? You'll be able to recognize the red flags of that doesn't sound right or that doesn't make sense. And I think that part, the Austin Energy Solar Education course is really important because it's like a very basic thing that weeds out all the people that can take advantage of you. I think that needs to be implemented on a statewide level. Like there should be a centralized source. Any homeowner in Texas looking to go solar should be able to go through this exercise and then be able to go shop for solar and be able to determine for themselves, that doesn't make sense. These things make sense. And that's really important. As far as the allocating dollars towards it, I think the biggest use of dollars right now would be the people that have been left behind, that have purchased the system. That system's not working. They've made the investment, but they haven't been able to connect to the grid for one variety of issue or the other. I think if we can do something to help those folks, right? Our perspective, it's really difficult for us to do it out of pocket, but we can certainly try to do it at cost or maybe help you as much as we possibly can if there was a support from the utility towards that as well. Maybe from the city, maybe from the utility, where dollars are going towards people that have a system that's not working. What would it take to get it back working? Even if it's 40, 50, 60% savings on your bill. Yes, you were promised 100% offset. You're getting a 50% offset, but that 50% offset is still better than zero. How can we most effectively and economically get you that 50% offset? That would be really helpful to that's a problem we need to address today, because there's tens of thousands of systems out there that have this problem, and there isn't a simple solution to it. Yeah. Beyond that, I would say consumer protection. All the people that are looking to go solar, if there should be a standardized way that they could understand what does the process of solar going looks like, what are the different components I need to know, and what kind of questions I need to ask and get back in writing from the contractor, so I can go back, review, and have a record of this is what I was promised, so that you have a recourse at a later date.
Yeah, and I will mention there is a separate bill that has also been filed that would require the Public Utility Commission, which is the state energy regulators. They basically oversee ERCOT. They would be required to basically create such information, and the bill stipulates how it would need to be shared and handed out. And we don't have anything like that right now. Right. You know, I don't even know if you go on the Public Utility Commission's website, I don't think that there's anything about solar, or the Attorney General's website. You'll see some attorney generals in other states sort of be the ones to issue that kind of consumer awareness. And there's not just like, I mean, there are resources from associations, which are great places to start locally. The Texas Solar Energy Society. Am I messing up that acronym? No. Okay. Yeah. They vet membership, and if people are found to be being dishonest, they'll kick them off. So that's a great place to start to look for reputable installers. That's right. Someone asked, and I just want to make sure I'm clearing this up. Can you disclose the relationship between Atma Energy and the Express News? Atma is a source I found. And then we vetted them before we trusted them as someone to sort of speak to transparent business practices, because they were very transparent with us. When I read through that over 1,000 complaints, they didn't have one. So, you know, there's no business relationship. There's not like there's not much to disclose other than I found them how I would find any source I find. And if you go to part 4 of the series, there's some other local businesses that we highlight that were just as transparent with me. One is called Freedom Solar. I think they're based in Austin technically, but they do work out here. And I think you actually used to work for them. Yeah. And then there's also Texas is it Central Texas Solar or Texas Central? I think I'm going to mess it up. It's either
both of them are there.
But they're a local company as well. They're in part 4, and they have also volunteered their money and time to fix systems for folks. And then St. Philip's Community College locally has a program under Craig Overmiller. He's another great resource, and his classes sometimes will, as part of their classwork, go and troubleshoot systems for free at cost of labor. They won't cover the parts you may need, you'll still have to cover that, but the students work under the guidance of Craig, who has all the certifications, and other certified electricians as part of their work on the job training, basically through that community college program. Isn't Texas a great place for solar, like California and Florida, because of all our sunny days? Yeah, definitely. Solar isn't bad, and I don't know. I guess and that is never my intention to make it seem like I cover the grid in my regular job. So I am regularly reporting about how solar has saved our butts many high demand days. But if you want to speak to why Texas, and I think that also one of the other questions that came up, and let me kind of answer that before I pass it over to you, because someone asked, why are the existing regulations for other services not enough, or enough for them, but not for solar? I mean, obviously I haven't, so this is the exact question. Let me read it. How is solar industry considered differently from other home service businesses that exhibit bad practices? What existing consumer protection policies exist that protect consumers from bad businesses like roofing, plumbers, etc.? Why are these policies insufficient for solar, in your opinion? So I will say, obviously, a disclaimer, I haven't deeply investigated all those other industries. I do know that roofing is unregulated in Texas, and that if you talk to the Better Business Bureau of Texas, the only industry that's complained about more than solar is roofing. Sometimes the issues can go hand in hand. I don't want to speak of something I'm not an expert on. I haven't spent nearly as much time, but I'm willing to say it's a safe answer that it's not, solar isn't the only industry that in Texas that could potentially benefit from better oversight. But this gets back to what I was saying before is like, why should solar be considered differently? There is a perfect storm we saw in Texas, which puts a lot of different things sort of combining together that created this sort of, I don't know if snowball effect is the right term, but like really built on each other. So you had the post-Uri feelings, and rightfully so, of folks wanting more self-reliance. That became part of a huge sales tactic, which could be a true, people with solar and battery systems can definitely keep their power on if the rest of their neighborhood is off. But you saw salesmen taking that and sort of stretching the truth and using Uri as a sales tactic. There's a huge discussion right now among energy experts in Texas and among our regulators of how much demand is growing. And it's really many experts have told me any extra megawatt we can get is beneficial. So, there are folks who are interested in that component as well. They just want to, which kind of builds off what I was saying about Uri. And then you also had the post COVID or during COVID, where you had a lot of people working from home, people who were interested in doing home improvements, that kind of coalesced and I think made it a situation where we had even more of an increase in folks with issues. Right. So there are, and then of course, as this questioner rightly pointed out, there's a lot of sun in Texas. So we are good. A lot of our folks are good candidates for solar. And by no means is the point of the investigation to say that you shouldn't get solar in Texas. Right. It's more just pointing out that folks are taking advantage of the fact that we are a good place for solar and using it to mislead folks. Exactly. But do you want to speak to anything more about like what makes Texas or even folks in San Antonio who may benefit from solar and what our position in the country and geographically means? Yeah, no, Texas is great for solar. It's plenty of sunlight, low cost of energy, good paybacks, good incentives. What makes solar kind of complicated or slightly different from HVAC and electrical in terms of being able to deliver is that there's a lot of different technical components that come together. So you have to have an electrician that kind of connects a energy generating resource to the grid as technical in nature. You have to have solar installers that know how to install systems on the roof. You have to have salespeople that understand the product. You have to have financial advisors that can kind of help you pick a loan product. You have to have tax advisors to help you maximize the incentive. So because there's so many moving parts and things are evolving quite rapidly, it's hard to keep up with it all from a consumer's perspective, right? So that makes it easy for solar companies to come in and understand your pain point and then tell you exactly what you want to hear. Because delivering that, you don't have a recourse to hold them accountable if they fail to deliver what they promised, right? So if you tell me your bill is $300 a month, I'll tell you, you can get a solar system for $250. You can save money right off the bat. And great, let's do it. There's no way to test drive that system. There's no way to find out if that's true or not until you purchase it. It's on your roof. It's there for a year and the company's gone under. So that is the part that makes it so much harder than a roofing contractor or an HVAC or electrical, because at least that's sort of defined in one trade. Mm-hmm. This is that sort of an overlapping of 3 or 4 different trades with a lot of moving pieces. Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think it was either you or Craig in sort of my early conversations of even just understanding, because I don't know if we mentioned this, in Texas, electricians are regulated. Yes. You do need a license to be an electrician. But when you're going through electrician training, that doesn't necessarily touch on solar panels at all. Exactly, yeah. Some of them do. Like if you go through the program at St. Philip's College, you are getting solar technician training in addition to becoming a certified electrician. A lot of them go on to become journeymen and do all those things. But if you're not, if you just came up through a more traditional electrician route, you don't necessarily know anything about solar. So some ways other states have combated that is by making like sub specialties under an electrician. So basically like you need like, yes, you're a certified electrician, but if you want to do solar too, you need to just take another test or some, there's some sub specialization there.
NABCEP offers another really nice training for us because, it's got sales training, technical training, installation training, electrician training, service training. So that's how we help keep up with the industry. The other part is that a lot of the battery manufacturers and inverter manufacturers offer certification and training. So as you shop for solar, you should look for installers that are certified, and then the technicians are certified for that product. Because that tells you that this person has gone through the training of that particular product and knows how to install it.
Right. And you can obviously fact check that with the company. Exactly. The company will tell,
Exactly.
Because we do, obviously Supertim here is here as an example of, a solar company I found to be going the extra mile to make sure folks understand what they're getting into. But he's not the only one. And there are many ways to find those folks and going, checking with the manufacturers is a way to do that. We have one of our early questions was how can homeowners do some research to see which contractors are ethical and that quotes are reasonable? What can a homeowner where can a homeowner get some expert to help with what they need to understand the system? So NABCEP, looking for folks who are certified through that program. I think if you go on their website, you can look up your zip code. And it'll identify folks for you. And again, you'll be able to see the difference of certifications because it's unfortunate that the one thing we have to kind of help delineate folks can also be misused by making it seem there's so many different certifications one can get through them. And some of them are much easier to get than others. Some of them I could probably test and get. And by no means should I be installing systems on anybody's roof. But some of them are very specialized. And you can kind of, the website, I've spent much too much time on it. You can really get through and kind of understand what the different teachings and certifications and stuff are. And then the solar energy. What are there any associations off the top of your head that you especially recommend as a good starting point?
Utility approved contractor list is the most best one, right? Like you have every single utility has one. CPS Energy has a really good list. So you start there and you get a list of 4 or 5 companies and you ask them for a quote. That would be a good way to start. Just to see, okay, these companies are registered with the utility. You can call the utility, ask them for their performance, ask them how long they've been in business, how frequently do they fail or pass inspections. No one is perfect. We don't pass every single inspection, but by in general, what does their turnaround time look like? That gives you an unbiased opinion on the contractor. And then you go to the contractor, get a quote, and if they're pushing you to sign a contract right away, that's a red flag. If they are giving you a contract without coming out to understand your site, that's a red flag. If they are offering financing institutions without telling you who the institution is or what that contract looks like, that's a red flag. So, start with the utility approved contractors list, shop around and get prices. And then you'll see a wide variety of prices. You'll see some, inexpensive products, expensive products, quality of service differs. And then after that, it's your personal choice. Which combination of product gets you closest to the goal and which company do you like the best?
So I'm trying to we have just a few minutes left. So I'm trying to just do a quick scan to make sure we cover the basis. One of the things I see coming up is sort of people wanting this clear answer that I know doesn't exactly exist of sort of what's normal. I think generally speaking, and I think some of this information is things I learned from you. 15 panels is obviously every house is going to be different, but 15 panels is usually pretty can be no. Okay, see, I'm wrong.
Yeah. So, but I prepared for this. So I'll give you. Yeah,
perfect. Yeah. Okay.
So to answer a simple question, right? 1 kW of solar, most systems are in kWs, right? 1 kW of solar that's facing south produces about $17 a month in savings. If it faces north, it produces $12 a month. So the range is between 12 to 17, 17 being ideal, facing south. Generally speaking, $15 per kW is what the solar system generates in savings. So if you pay $150 a month in average utility bills, you need a 10 kW system. So a 10 kW system, $150 a month is pretty average in San Antonio and Texas areas. Cost of this is somewhere between $2,100 a kW. That's how you think of cost. If you have a 10 kW system, $21,000 is sort of the average cost. So in our experience, most system sizes range between 9 to 14 kW, sort of the range. Cost is between 18,000 to 30,000 is sort of the range of cost. And then you can get, you can choose a really high quality product with long warranties. You can choose a more economical product with less warranty. So you can then get creative with the system. So, yeah. But generally speaking, 1 kW, $15 a month is what you can save. So just take whatever you pay per month, divide that by 15. That's how many kWs you need. And then you go and shop it and hey, give me a quote for 10 kW system. See what kind of prices you get.
Okay, great. I want to squeeze one last thing in before we move. And there was a question about like the rate in which utilities will pay you for your power. Mm-hmm. That is not consistent. It is not regulated. Yeah. It depends very much by your utility. And some utilities, it makes more sense to have extra power, whereas in other utilities, it makes zero sense. Yep. I wish there was a simpler answer, but it really it varies so greatly. And there isn't like a set amount that any one utility in Texas has to pay. That is another legislative discussion that we may see this session or may not. And that also can affect how big to make a system and what makes sense in San Antonio. I know for a fact doesn't always make sense in Houston, where you have Octopus Energy and these other options that have more robust buyback programs. So that also is something to consider. Well, we are wrapping up. Thank you guys so much. Folks asked how to reach Super Tim. His bio is in the chat. Atma Energy, if ATMA, very easy to Google and find. He's easy to track down. And please, if you, again, part 4 of the series, highlight some other local companies that are doing good work and that are also folks that may be worth reaching out to if you're having issues. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. And feel free to email me as well. I regularly am fielding solar questions now, and I at least try to pass people on to the best person suited to help them out. Thanks again for joining us today at the Express News.
Thank you, guys.